Preface. Aria Winters never imagined that the boy who once held her secrets and made her feel safe would become the one whose presence left scars she couldn't shake. Hunter Rodriguez had been her closest friend, her first refuge, then slowly, unknowingly, he became the source of her pain. The shadow she couldn't outrun. Everything changed on her 18th birthday. Fate has a way of rewriting even the strongest walls, and the mate bond does not wait for forgiveness or understanding. Aria's mate, her destined counterpart, is none other than Hunter. Now Aria must navigate the impossible. The boy who tormented her is also the one she is bound to, and a bond forged by destiny pulses through her veins. Unrelenting and demanding, Hunter, faced with the weight of his mistakes, seeks redemption, desperate to earn what he once broke. As the pack is threatened by sudden, mysterious rogue attacks, Aria and Hunter are forced into proximity. Their survival intertwined. Every choice is a gamble, every glance a spark, and the lines between resentment, desire, and destiny blur. In a world where loyalty can be lethal and love is never simple, one truth remains: sometimes the one who hurt you the most is also the only one who can save you. Chapter 1. Childhood Shadows. The sun had not yet risen over the outskirts of Moonridge, but the sky was already streaked with pale orange and violet. The forest smelled of dew, of pine and damp earth, a scent Aria had memorized over countless mornings spent running along the narrow trails behind her home. She breathed in deeply, trying to hold on to that calm before the inevitable, before the world reminded her again that nothing stayed safe for long. She was only 8 when Hunter first appeared in her life, a boy with dark eyes that caught the sunlight in mischievous flashes. Back then, he had been everything a child could hope for: a friend, a partner in adventure, someone who made the world feel like it could be a place without danger. They raced through the meadows barefoot, chased by butterflies and clouds, and for a moment Aria believed that those moments could last forever. "You're slowing down," Hunter called one morning, crouching on the edge of the creek as if daring her to leap across. "I'm not," she protested, though her small legs were shaking, her chest heaving. Hunter grinned, that crooked, boyish grin that promised both mischief and protection. "Then prove it," she jumped, shoes sliding in the mud, and his hand shot out instinctively to catch hers. That touch, not fleeting but firm, anchored her against the sudden panic that had surged when she nearly fell. It was a gesture that left a permanent mark, not on her skin but on her memory. "I've got you," he had whispered, though she didn't realize it then. Time, as it tends to do, was not patient. Years passed, and the carefree laughter of childhood grew strained. By the age of 12, the closeness they had shared had shifted into something unrecognizable. Hunter's grin became sharper, his jokes edged with an unspoken authority, the kind that reminded everyone Aria he belonged to the world in ways she never would. "You're too quiet," he said once during training in the pack grounds, his voice carrying farther than intended. The other children laughed, but Hunter didn't stop them. He didn't even look at her. The words, though subtle, had carved a hollow in her chest. Aria forced herself to laugh with the others, a hollow sound that even she knew was a mask. She told herself it didn't matter, that it wasn't real. But the meadow, once a sanctuary, now seemed too small, too exposed. Her laughter was always overshadowed by his presence, the same presence that had once promised safety, but now reminded her of vulnerability. She retreated to the edge of the forest that evening, leaning against a sturdy oak cotoner, watching the moon rise as if it might offer guidance. She pressed her fingers to the rough bark and whispered to the empty air. Why did it change? No answer came, only the rustle of leaves and the distant howl of a wolf in the mountains beyond. Her 18th birthday had always been a line in the sand, a day she imagined would finally belong to her. The pack would celebrate with the usual feast, the elders reciting age-old blessings, the younger ones chasing each other across the grounds. She had pictured it, a day free from hunterous shadow, a day where she could stand in the sun and feel as if the world recognized her existence. The morning arrived bright and deceptively calm. Sunlight spilled across her room, catching the edges of her hair in golden strands. She dressed carefully, choosing a soft blue dress that swirled around her knees as she moved. Every detail mattered. She wanted today to be perfect. Even if the world around her had never been forgiving. Her footsteps carried her through the familiar halls of the Pack estate, the scent of baked bread and roasted meat mingling with the ever-present undercurrent of pine and leather. Guests were arriving, their chatter a soft hum beneath the excited murmurs of the younger Pack members. Then he appeared. Hunter Rodriguez, taller, broader, his eyes still carrying that familiar spark, but now tempered with something heavier, responsibility, authority. The weight of the alpha air. The moment their gazes collided, the air seemed to tremble. There was recognition, a thread of something unspoken that tugged between them, but it was not comfort she felt. It was binding. The mate bond revealed itself with a suddenness that left her breathless. A pulse, an invisible tether, stretched through the room and looped around her heart, demanding attention, acknowledgement, submission. Arya recoiled instinctively, the instinctual part of her wolf-stirring, whispering resistance. Hunter's expression faltered, just for a heartbeat. Guilt flickered across his face, fleeting but undeniable. He had always known her. But never like this, not as the one his soul had chosen, not as the girl who had been under his protection. And yet under his cruelty. Arya. His voice was low, measured, carrying the weight of 1,000 unspoken apologies. She turned abruptly, fleeing to the edge of the garden. Her chest burned, her mind scrambled. This was not what she had expected. Her 18th birthday, her day of freedom, had twisted into the moment that revealed her deepest, most complicated truth. The boy who had tormented her, who had shaped her fears and her walls, was now the one she was irrevocably bound to. The rest of the day unfolded in a blur. Conversations, laughter, and the ceremonial exchange of gifts seemed distant, muted behind the pounding of her heart and the relentless pull of the bond. She caught glimpses of Hunter across the grounds, each one a silent accusation, a plea, a warning. Their eyes met repeatedly, each collision sharpening the tension that stretched taut between them. By the time the moon rose fully overhead, pale and commanding, Arya had retreated to the forest beyond the estate. She ran through the familiar paths, feet pounding against dirt and stone, branches whipping at her arms, but the bond never loosened. It was there, a constant reminder that fate had no interest in her plans. And then, from the shadows, a low growl, unfamiliar and yet close enough to rattle her instincts, warned her that danger was coming, and that this night was only the beginning. Hunter was close behind, moving with a precision that was all his own. He did not speak at first, allowing her the illusion of escape, but the tether of their bond made the chase inevitable. "You don't have to run from me," he said finally, his voice softer than the wind through the trees. Not tonight. Arya skidded to a halt, chest heaving, and for a moment the forest seemed to hold its breath. She wanted to deny him, to sever the connection that felt like it had taken root inside her very bones. But the truth, undeniable and relentless, pressed against her from the inside out. She could not escape. And for the first time, the girl who had built walls around her heart understood that those walls were meaningless against what fate had claimed. The rogue howls in the distance reminded her that danger waited not just in the forest, but in the life she had thought she knew. And Hunter, her tormentor, her mate, the boy who had haunted her steps, was both the threat and the salvation she could not yet name. The shadows of Moon Ridge stretched long beneath the full moon, and Arya knew, with a sinking certainty, that everything had changed. Chapter 2. From friend to stranger, the morning after her 18th birthday carried a brittle kind of light. Moon Ridge was quiet, the streets empty save for the early risers preparing for their daily routines. Arya moved through the familiar paths with a deliberate pace, her mind replaying the events of the previous night. The full moon had illuminated more than just the estate grounds. He had illuminated the truth she could no longer ignore. Hunter Rodriguez, the boy who had shaped her childhood both with laughter and cruelty, was now bound to her by a force she had no choice but to acknowledge. She pressed her hands against the cool railing of the balcony, staring at the forest that stretched beyond the horizon. The mate bond throbbed quietly beneath her skin, insistent and unyielding. Every instinct screamed to resist it. Yet part of her felt the tug, a magnetic pull toward the boy she both despised and could not deny. Hunter appeared at the edge of the courtyard, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. His posture was rigid, careful, and every step he took seemed measured as if the ground itself obeyed him. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world around them paused. The pack members milling about seemed to fade into a blur, leaving only the two of them in sharp focus. Arya turned away quickly, feeling her chest tighten. She couldn't to let him see her tremble. She couldn't to let him sense that beneath her carefully maintained walls she felt a mixture of anger, confusion, and something far deeper she wasn't ready to name. She moved through the training grounds, her steps light but deliberate. The other pack members greeted her politely, but there was an undercurrent of curiosity, whispers she couldn't ignore. The bond was visible, even to them. Some kept their distance, others cast glances that were too long, too calculating. The world had changed overnight, and Arya felt the weight of it in every step. Hunter approached, his expression unreadable. For the first time, she noticed the subtle strain around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He had always been confident, untouchable even. But now there was a shadow behind the mask. A shadow born of guilt, responsibility, and perhaps fear of what the bond might demand. "Arya," he began, his voice low, controlled. "We need to talk." She froze, every nerve in her body bristling. She wanted to deny him, to turn and flee into the forest, but the bond held her in place. A silent, unrelenting tether that reminded her she had no choice in this encounter. "I don't think there's anything to say," she replied, her tone sharper than she intended. Hunter's gaze softened for just a moment, but it did not waver. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "There's everything to say, and I need you to hear it. I never wanted to hurt you, Arya. I never meant—" "Stop." She cut him off, her hands clenching into fists. "Don't you dare start with apologies." "You think a few words can undo years of?" she faltered, her voice breaking for the first time. She swallowed hard, forcing the words back down. Anger had always been easier than pain, easier than admitting she still felt anything for him at all. Hunter's eyes darkened, and for a moment she saw the boy she had once trusted, the boy who had run barefoot beside her through sunlit meadows. That boy was gone, her perhaps buried beneath layers of pride, expectation, and the weight of being heir to the Alpha. "I didn't ask for this," he admitted, the words low, almost inaudible, but the sincerity cut through her defenses. "But the bond, it is real. I feel it, Arya. I can't ignore it, and I want not any more." She turned away, her vision swimming with memories she didn't want to revisit. The teasing, the laughter that had turned to ridicule, the moments when he had been both her friend and her tormentor. The forest, once a place of solace, now felt constricting, echoing with the ghosts of their past. The Pacus elders noticed the tension, murmuring among themselves. The council would question the bond soon, and the scrutiny of her peers weighed heavily on her. She had always managed to navigate their expectations, to carve out small spaces of autonomy. But now the threads of her life were tangled with Hunter in ways she could not control. A sudden commotion near the edge of the training grounds drew her attention. A younger pack member stumbled during drills, a roguish shadow passing silently through the trees. The threat was subtle, almost imperceptible. Yet her instincts flared instantly. The bond pulsed with urgency, tugging her attention toward Hunter. Without thinking, she darted forward, her wolf stirring beneath the surface of her control. The forest, the shadows, the sunlight filtering through the trees, twit all sharpened into clarity. And Hunter was there, moving with precision, placing himself between her and the unseen danger. His hand brushed hers in a moment of instinctual contact, and the pull of the bond hit her with new intensity. Her chest tightened, and for the first time, the walls she had built around her heart wavered. The connection was undeniable, inescapable, and frighteningly intimate. "You're not alone," he said softly, eyes locked on hers. There was no apology in his voice this time, no pretense. Only truth. Arya's breath caught. The forest seemed to pulse around them, alive with silent watchers, hidden dangers, and the first murmurs of rogue threats that would soon escalate. The sunlight slanted through the branches, painting the ground with streaks of golden shadow, mirroring the storm that raged inside her. She wanted to pull away, to retreat into her solitude, to deny everything she had felt since the bond revealed itself. But the thread connecting them refused to loosen. It tugged at her very bones, insistent and unyielding. "Stay with me," Hunter said, his voice a whisper that carried farther than the wind. "Just for now." "Let me protect you." Arya hesitated. The forest held its breath. The Pacus passed, her own fears, the weight of betrayal and desire. Tiknal pressed against her, and yet she could not deny the magnetism of his presence. For a fleeting second, the world narrowed to just the two of them, suspended between memory and destiny, anger and need, fear and the inescapable truth that had changed everything overnight. The rogue howls in the distance reminded her that this was only the beginning. Danger was real, imminent, and unavoidable. And Hunter, boy who had tormented her, the mate she had resisted. The alpha heir bound to her by Fitet was standing in the center of it, challenging her defenses in ways she had never imagined. Arya squared her shoulders, exhaling slowly. She would not submit. Not yet. But the bond whispered, insistent and unrelenting, that the days ahead would demand more than resistance. And for the first time, she realized that running from him, from destiny, was no longer an option. Chapter 3. The Eve of Freedom, The night before Ria's 18th birthday had been quiet, deceptively serene. The moon hovered low over Moon Ridge, spilling silver across the treetops and the jagged stone of the estate walls. Arya wandered the forest edge, her bare fingers brushing against frost-kissed leaves. She had always loved this hour, distine pause before night fully claimed the land. The time when the world seemed to exhale and reveal its hidden truths. Tonight however, the forest felt different. There was a tension woven into the air, subtle yet insistent, like a breath held too long. Her pulse thrummed in response, an echo of the bond that had been quietly stirring within her since the first brush of Hunter's presence. She had tried to ignore it, to tell herself that the boy who had once humiliated her, the alpha heir whose shadow had loomed over her adolescence, could never be hers. But the threads of destiny had a stubborn way of unraveling even the tightest of denials. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin. Restless, whispering incenses she had only just begun to understand. It was a feeling that defied logic, urging her to move, to see, to listen. She shivered, not from cold, but from the pull she could not resist. From the trailing, the faintest sound made her freeze, a rustle too deliberate for the wind, to persist for any creature native to the woods. Her ears twitched, instincts sharpened, and then she saw him. Hunter. He emerged from the shadowed grove with the casual authority of a predator accustomed to command. Yet tonight there was something different. His eyes were softer, shadows of guilt hidden behind the confident mask he had worn for years. He had approached quietly, without announcement, his presence somehow both threatening and magnetic. "Arya," he said, voice low, careful, almost reverent. "You're out late." She stiffened, turning away, willing herself to act as though his presence meant nothing. "I needed air," she replied. Her voice, brittle with tension, carried across the frosted ground. "And I didn't expect to run into a police." Hunter stepped closer, the snow-crusted leaves crunching underfoot. "We need to talk," he said simply. No apology, no attempt at charm, just a statement weighted with inevitability. She closed her eyes briefly, swallowing against the surge of memories that threatened to overwhelm her. The pranks, the laughter that had shifted into ridicule, the betrayals etched into the early chapters of her life. All of it had led to this invisible tether that now bound them together, refusing to loosen despite her defiance. "I don't want to talk," she said, turning sharply. "Not tonight." "Then let me show you," he replied, stepping into the moonlight so that the glow traced the lines of his face. She could see the ridges of vulnerability beneath the carefully constructed alpha air, and it unsettled her. It unsettled her more than any harsh word or physical blow ever had. The air between them seemed to shimmer, charged with an energy neither could deny. The mate bond pulsed beneath her skin like a heartbeat she had never known she possessed. It whispered, urgent and unrelenting, that resistance was temporary, that the threads woven between them were unbreakable. Hunter reached out, hesitated, then withdrew. "I won't force you," he said quietly. "But you need to understand." Jufel felt it from the moment the bond revealed itself. "Every instinct, every thought, points to you. I can't ignore it. I won't." She felt her wolf stir, a flicker of instinct that made her spine tingle. The pull was stronger than it had been before, stronger than any memory of hurt or humiliation. It demanded attention, obedience. A surrender she was unprepared to grant. And yet, as much as she resisted, a part of her thrilled at the thought of confronting him, of facing the impossible connection that neither of them had asked for but could not escape. A distant howl sliced through the silence, abrupt and chilling. The rogue threats were already at the edges of their territory, a warning she could not ignore. Her pulse quickened, mixing fear with the insistent thrum of the mate bond. The night had shifted, transformed, and she was caught in the center of it. Hunter's hand brushed hers again, tentative this time, a spark igniting along her nerves. "We're stronger together," he said, voice carrying both command and plea. "I can protect you, but I need you to trust me, Ember, for a moment." Her breath hitched. The forest seemed to hold its breath with her, every shadow, every glint of moonlight magnifying the tension. Trust was impossible. She had spent her life building walls against him, against others, against the world. And now? The bond was demanding she tear them down, piece by piece. She stepped back, shaking her head, but the bond tugged harder. Unyielding, insistent. It was as though her very blood remembered a truth her mind refused to acknowledge. She was his mate. Whether she accepted it or not, destiny had chosen. The howl came again, closer this time, echoing from the forest toward the outskirts of the estate. Danger was near. Rogue attacks, whispered threats. The stirrings of unrest within the Paxcati were all threads woven into the same tapestry as the bond that now tied them together. Arya exhaled slowly, forcing herself to focus. One step at a time, she said, almost to herself. "Just one step?" Hunter nodded, his gaze unwavering. "One step," he echoed, and in that moment it felt as though the forest, the moon, the very world itself had narrowed to their shared heartbeat. Tonight she had glimpsed the truth. Freedom was an illusion, if the mate bond existed. Yet, beneath the fear and resistance, a spark of something new, possibility, strength, even desire, had begun to kindle. The eve of freedom had arrived. But it was not the freedom she had imagined. It was the eve of a trial that would demand courage, resilience, and a reckoning with the boy who had once been her tormentor, now, inexplicably. Her tether to a fate she could neither escape nor fully understand. The forest swallowed the echoes of their words, leaving the cold moonlight and the faint, insistent pulse of the mate bond as witnesses to the beginning of a new chapter east where survival, trust, and desire would collide in ways neither Aryan or Hunter could anticipate. And as the wind rustled the trees, whispering secrets that only the night could hold, Arya felt a strange clarity settle over her. The bond would shape her future, whether she willed it or not. She just hoped she would survive the night. Chapter 4. The Moon's Decree. The night of Arya's 18th birthday arrived with an unnatural stillness. Moonridge lay under a heavy, silver haze, the air dense with frost and anticipation. Every branch, every stone seemed charged, quivering with a presence unseen. Arya sat by her bedroom window, gazing at the pale moon, unaware that her world was about to tilt irreversibly. For months she had prepared herself, emotionally, mentally, even physically, for independence, for freedom from the shadow of Hunter Rodriguez. But freedom, she realized with a sinking pulse, was never truly hers to claim. The mate bond pulsed beneath her skin, a silent drumbeat of inevitability she could no longer ignore. A soft knock on her door made her start. "Come in," she called, her voice measured, betraying none of the anticipation twisting in her chest. Hunter stepped inside, careful, restrained. No arrogance, no familiar cruelty, just the weight of inevitability carried in every measured movement. His eyes searched hers, and for a heartbeat the world shrank to the space between them. "It's your night," he said softly. The moon, it chooses tonight, Arya swallowed, her throat tight. She had felt it, aye shift. The stirrings within her that had begun at the forest edge, the tug of something primal that had no name. I am not ready, she whispered, though a tremor of fear and curiosity ran through her. You are Archie countered. Whether you believe it or not, the bond doesn't he wait for permission? She backed toward the window. Frost nipping at her bare feet. Her wolf stirred, an urgent pulse beneath her skin, demanding acknowledgement, claiming space that had always felt empty. Images flashed behind her closed eyelids. The forest, the clearing. Hunter's presence, and then her parents, long gone, a whisper of guilt and loss threading through her memory. The moonlight struck the floorboards, spilling silver across her skin. She felt it pull, undeniable, inexorable, weaving her heartbeat with Huntress. Her breath hitched, and suddenly the room spun. The shift came not gently, not with ceremony, but with the violence of inevitability. Pain, cold and electric, tore through her limbs. Her senses expanded beyond the room, the walls, the estate. She smelled the forest, the frost, the distant predators. She heard the heartbeat of every wolf within the pacey, faint but persistent. And then she felt him. Hunter's presence enveloped her like a tide, a wave of power and restraint, of longing and guilt. He knelt instinctively, one hand extended as though to anchor her. Arya, it is ki you ormain. She shook her head violently, staggering. No, I can't-y, I won't-y, but her voice betrayed her, quivering as the bond claimed her. Her wolf rose within her. Not with violence, but with awareness, with clarity, with a hunger for connection. Memories she had buried, instincts she had ignored, and a thread of destiny entwined to draw her toward him. Hunter's hand brushed her cheek, tentative, reverent, yet unyielding. I want to hurt you, he said. I only want to protect you and to be with you. This bond doesn't lie. I can't lie to it, and neither can you. Tears pricked Arya's eyes, hot and unbidden. The wolf within her pressed against the edges of her consciousness, whispering promises of strength, of purpose, of survival intertwined with connection. And somewhere deep in that rush of sensation, she realized that she had been running from herself all along. The air shifted. Outside, a howl echoed through the estate, distant but chilling. The rogue attacks, whispered warnings, the threads of danger she had been sensing, together were converging tonight, drawn to the pulse of her awakening. Arya's legs trembled, her pulse racing, yet clarity broke through the fear. If this bond exists, then so does my power, she said, voice stronger than she expected. If I am bound, then I will learn to use it. Hunter's eyes softened, a rare vulnerability peeking through his controlled alpha presence. Then we face it together, he said. Tonight? Nothing else matters. The moonlight thickened, bathing the room in silver brilliance. Her shift completed, Nate violent. Not monstrous, but transformative. For brushed against her skin, claws retracted, muscles coiled with newfound strength. Her senses were hers, yet shared, intertwined with Hunter's presence. A knock shattered the moment. One of the Pekka scouts appeared at the door, urgency in his eyes. Rogue attacks, they're moving closer. You need to prepare. Of Arya and Hunter exchanged a glance. The world beyond the estate was about to collide with the destiny within these walls. The mate bond, once an abstract threat, had become their shared truth. Survival, power, connection, Teeknet were no longer separate. Hunter offered his hand. Ready? He asked. Arya hesitated only for a heartbeat, then grasped it firmly. The touch was electric. Grounding yet liberating. The first real acknowledgement that the bond, whether she wanted it or not, was theirs to navigate together, outside. The howl repeated, closer now. Shadows stretched across the walls, and the first embers of conflict sparked in the distance. The moon had decreed it. Their lives were no longer theirs alone. And in the binding light of that silver night, Arya understood. Power, destiny, and survival were inseparable from the boy she had once hated, and now could not deny. The eve of freedom had ended. The moon's decree had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 5. Chains of the Bond. The dawn crept over Moonridge like a hesitant promise. Pale light spilling across the frost, late in his state, Arya sat on the edge of her bed. Bare feet brushing against the cold floorboards, staring at the faint silver trace of the moon that lingered even as the sun rose. The shift had left her exhausted, but her wolf hummed beneath her skin, restless and insistent, as though impatient for what was coming next. Hunter stood near the window, his profile sharp against the morning light. He had remained by her side through the night, silent and unwavering. The weight of the mate bond evident in every measured breath. He looked at her now with a mixture of guilt, reverence, and something she couldn't yet name. "You're awake," he said softly. His voice carried the undercurrent of authority and care, both alpha and mate. "I am Sart," she replied, keeping her tone neutral, though the pulse of the bond throbbed in her chest like a drumbeat she could not ignore. "But I don't know if I am ready for whatever this is." Hunter stepped closer, eyes never leaving hers. "You are. Whether you admit it or not. The bond doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait for permission. And you are stronger than you realize." Her wolf stirred again, a flicker of energy that traced along her spine and down her limbs. It was a whisper, a reminder that she was no longer just a girl who had endured ridicule and isolation. She was a force entwined with the boy who had been her tormentor, and now her tether to something greater. "I don't understand," she said, shaking her head. "Why me? Why now? After everything, how could this be fair?" Hunter's jaw tightened. "Fair has nothing to do with it. Destiny doesn't ask for permission, Arya. It doesn't apologize. It only claims." He reached out tentatively, brushing his fingers along hers. The contact sent a jolt of heat through her veins. A tether of inevitability that she could neither resist nor ignore. She recoiled slightly. But the pull of the mate bond persisted, tightening around her like an invisible chain. Every instinct screamed to resist, to flee, to deny what was already written in the threads of her blood and soul. Yet beneath the resistance, a strange thrill stirred. The bond was not just a link to Hunter. 'Twas a key to power she had never known she possessed. The estate doors burst open suddenly, and a pack scout entered, eyes wide with urgency. "Rogue scouts spotted at the northern ridge," he announced. "They're moving fast. And they've marked the path toward the village. We need to prepare." Avery felt the wolf within her flare. Danger, she realized, was not a distant threat. Twitter was immediate, and it would test everything she had just begun to understand. Her pulse quickened, not with fear, but with a raw, focused awareness. Hunter's gaze followed hers, sharp and alert. "We face this together," he said, stepping closer, his presence both shield and anchor. The mate bond pulsed, urgent and insistent, binding them in ways that transcended choice. Arya's lips pressed into a thin line. "Together doesn't he mean I'm accepting this?" she muttered, yet even as she spoke, The tension in her body eased slightly at his nearness, the unspoken understanding that survival power, and perhaps even connection, depended on unity, however reluctantly she admitted it. Hunter extended a hand again, more insistently this time. "I am not asking for permission anymore. I am asking for trust." Even if only a little, her wolf growled low within her, a reminder of the primal instincts she was only beginning to harness. She hesitated, torn between resistance and surrender. Then, with a careful motion, she placed her hand in his. The touch was electric, and the bond responded immediately, a pulse of energy that seemed to ripple through both of them, affirming the unyielding link that now hid their fates. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of rogue howls, a prelude to the chaos approaching. Arya drew a deep breath, centering herself. The bond was no longer a distant threat or a whispered promise, 'twas a reality, binding them to each other in ways neither could deny. Hunter's sea softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through the alpha mask. "You'll see," he said quietly. "This bond doesn't control you. It strengthens you, and together we can face whatever comes." Aryak's wolf shifted beneath her skin. A flicker of acknowledgement, of readiness. She could feel the latent strength flowing through her veins, the pulse of power intertwined with the bond. She realized, with a clarity that startled her, that she could no longer define herself by the past, ill-bullying, the isolation, the torment. She was something else now. Something alive is formidable, and tethered to the boy she had once despised. The sun rose higher, spilling light across Moon Ridge, and casting long shadows that intertwined with the remnants of moonlight. The world beyond the estate called, danger looming, tests waiting, and the threads of destiny tightening around them both. Hunter squeezed her hand gently, anchoring her to the present, to the bond, to the path that neither could escape. "Chains of the bond," he murmured, "but also chains we can learn to wield, not just endure." Arya's eyes met his, a spark of defiance mingling with curiosity, fear merging with the stirrings of latent power. "Then we start learning," she said softly, almost to herself, one step at a time, and in that silent agreement. The bond pulsed stronger, the first test of trust and survival looming on the horizon. The world was shifting, and nothing would ever be the same again. The rogue threat, the alpha heiress guilt, and the awakening of her own wolf would collide in the days to come. Chains of the bond were forged, not just of duty, but of power choice, and the first fragile threads of connection neither Aryan or Hunter could yet fully understand. Chapter 6. First Sparks of Defiance. The training grounds of Moonridge Pack were alive with early morning mist, curling around the jagged stones and frost, laden grass like restless spirits. Arya stood at the edge of the field, her breath visible in the cold, and her wolf stirred beneath her skin, attuned to every movement, every flicker of shadow. Today she would face Hunter, not as a friend, not as a tormentor, but as the mate she had yet to accept. Hunter approached, his gait purposeful, yet cautious, as though measuring every step against the tension vibrating between them. His eyes caught hers, sharp and steady, betraying nothing, yet radiating an intensity that made her chest tighten. "Morning," he said, voice low, not a greeting, not a question, but an assertion. The bond throbbed between them, invisible yet undeniable, pressing on her skin like a phantom weight. Arya squared her shoulders, gripping the staff in her hands. She would not give him the satisfaction of yielding. Not yet. "I'm ready," she said, though the words trembled slightly. I will train. On my terms. Hunter raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement crossing his otherwise controlled expression. On your terms? He echoed. Are we training or avoiding the inevitable? She tightened her grip. Both, she replied, meeting his gaze. And don't-y assume anything. I won't-y be LLED seemed to shiver around them, swirling with anticipation. Other pack members gave them space. Sensing the charged energy of the bond and the fragile equilibrium between them, whispers floated across the grounds, subtle, cautious, the alpha heir and his mate, both caught in a tension that promised storm. Hunter lifted his staff, his movements precise, deliberate. Very well. Then we train like adversaries. You against me. Arya's pulse surged. Her wolf flared, urging her to strike, to move, to claim the space they shared. Yet she restrained herself, stepping into the field with careful grace. Agreed, she said. But know this, I want to be an easy opponent. They circled each other, eyes locked. Breath synchronized to the rhythm of tension. Every movement was a test, every feint a declaration. The bond hummed, pulsing with each heartbeat, each footfall, each subtle shift of weight. Arya felt it pressing against her consciousness. A whisper of inevitability she tried to resist, even as her instincts demanded acknowledgement. Hunter struck first, swift and controlled, a practiced movement designed to gauge her reflexes. She parried, muscles coiling, senses expanding beyond the human, beyond the mundane, into the sharp clarity of her wolf. Every strike, every dodge, every pulse of energy reminded her the bond did not merely connect, Teaker-enhanced, amplified, demanded awareness. You're stronger than I expected, Hunter murmured, a note of grudging respect threading his words. Bit not, Surind, never, Arya replied, matching his intensity, defying the pull that sought to bind her. Their duel continued, movements fluid yet charged with undercurrents of something unspoken. Each clash of staff against staff sent ripples of tension through the air, a physical manifestation of the invisible threads of their bond. Neither gave quarter, yet neither could deny the pull beneath the resistance, a silent acknowledgment that their fates were intertwined. Suddenly, a shriek echoed from the edge of the grounds. Arya froze, his instincts flaring. Her wolf surged, alert and hungry for action. Hunter's eyes snapped toward the sound, and without hesitation he shifted, muscles rippling, senses sharpening. A rogue had slipped past the outer patrols, moving with intent toward the packus in her grounds. Its presence was subtle yet lethal, a shadow among shadows, drawn perhaps by the untested pulse of Arya's awakening wolf. Stay close, Hunter commanded, voice taut. The bond links us. Use it. Arya's wolf surged within her. Not as a passive observer, but as an active participant. She felt Hunter's presence as if it were a tether, a lifeline. A challenge. Together, they moved, fluid and precise, responding to instincts and awareness beyond the ordinary. The rogue's attack was brief but brutal, and Arya found herself reacting with a speed, a clarity, and a power that left her breathless. When the threat dissipated, the rogue retreating into the forest, Arya's chest heaved, adrenaline and the bond's pulse mingling into a heady rhythm. Hunter lowered his gaze to meet hers, eyes darkened with relief and pride. You didn't falter, he said quietly, almost reverently. Your wolf, it is alive. And you are alive? Arya stepped back, regaining control over her racing heart. I didn't falter because of you, she said firmly. I did it because of me. Don't forget that. Hunter smiled faintly. a shadow of his usual charm tempered by respect. "I wouldn't a dream of forgetting," he replied. "But know this, bond. Our bond, it is not just strength. It is trust. And that we have yet to fully navigate Arya Espal slowed. But the energy between them remained taut, like a wire stretched to its limit. The first sparks of defiance had flared, illuminating both their strengths and weaknesses, both their connection and the walls they had yet to tear down. The rogue threat had been a reminder. Danger was never abstract. The bond was not just a tether, 'twit was a chain, yes, but one that could be wielded, not just endured. And the first lessons of power, trust, and survival had only just begun. As the mist lifted with the rising sun, the pack observed silently the subtle acknowledgment passing between them. The alpha heir and his mate, bound by something neither could yet name, were at the precipice of a transformation that would challenge everything they knew about power, about loyalty, and about themselves. Arya turned to Hunter, the defiance still smoldering in her eyes, and whispered almost to herself. "We're just getting started." Hunter's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "I wouldn't expect anything less." And with that, the morning light of Moonridge cast long shadows over to wolves, learning the delicate balance between resistance, surrender, and the inexorable pull of fate. Chapter 7. Hunter-S Guilt. Hunter Rodriguez moved silently through the halls of Moonridge Estate, the weight of the morning's events pressing against his shoulders like armor he couldn't remove. The duel on the training grounds, Arya's defiance, and the rogue's sudden strike played over in his mind with a clarity that left him restless and restless. Every heartbeat was a reminder. He had failed her once, and the bond now demanded he face the consequences. He paused by a window, watching the sun climb higher, painting the estate walls in a harsh, golden light. His reflection stared back at him, sharp, determined, but haunted. 9 years of unacknowledged guilt, of missteps and cruelty, had led to this moment. The realization that Arya, the girl he had tormented in childhood and adolescence, was now the one tethered to him by fate. Gnawed at his pride and carved into his conscience. The mate bond throbbed beneath his skin, an unrelenting pulse that refused to be ignored. It was not gentle or patient. It was insistent, demanding recognition, demanding attention, demanding reckoning. And yet he could not scent her fully. Her essence remained just beyond his grasp, teasing him, testing him. He closed his eyes and allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability. The memories came unbidden. Laughter shared in innocent moments. The playful camaraderie that had once existed before cruelty and misunderstanding had carved the space between them. And then the darker memories, times he had pushed her away, humiliated her, and left scars that ran deeper than either of them could measure. Hunter's wolf stirred uneasily, the manifestation of his inner turmoil. It growled softly, a sound of frustration, of anticipation, of need abisid. "I failed you?" he whispered, voice barely audible even to himself. "I failed when it mattered most. And now fate has chained us together." He ran a hand through his hair, the tension knotting his muscles. The rogue's attack earlier had been a stark reminder that their world was fraught with danger. Yet it was not the external threats that haunted him most. Twister was the recognition that his mate, the girl whose life he had complicated with every cruel word and every thoughtless act, now stood before him, unyielding, fierce, and necessary. Hunter's thoughts returned to the bond, the invisible tether that connected them in ways neither could fully control. It was as much a challenge as it was a promise. And he realized, with a clarity that left him breathless, that the guilt he carried was only part of what he needed to confront. The other part was trust, earning Arian's trust, step by painstaking step, even as she resisted. Even as her eyes warned him away, even as her wolf seethed beneath her skin with power, he could only begin to comprehend. A sudden knock at the door pulled him from his reflection. The pack scout from the training grounds entered, eyes wide with urgency. Alpha Heir, another rogue sighting. They've taken the eastern ridge. Moving toward the village outskirts, Hunter's jaw tightened. Alert the guards. Set the perimeter. Keep the civilians safe. And Arya. He paused, swallowing the lump in his throat. Have stay close. Whatever comes, we face it together. The scout nodded, departing swiftly, leaving Hunter alone once more with his thoughts. He clenched his fists, the leather of his gloves creaking, and allowed himself a moment to stare at the empty hallway. Imagining her there, imagining her safe, imagining the bond pulsing, pulling, insistent, and yet manageable if he could only act with care, with wisdom, with restraint. Hunter's wolf shifted beneath his skin, responding to his tension, matching his heartbeat, heightening his senses. He could feel her, distant yet tethered, like a flame flickering just beyond reach. And with it came a visceral need to protect, to correct, to atone. "I will not fail you again," he murmured, words both a vow and a warning. The guilt that had haunted him for nearly a decade transformed, sharpened by necessity and tempered by the bond's demand. The rogue threat, the pack's safety, and the fragile trust between them would all converge, and he knew he could not falter. Hunter moved from the window with purpose, boots echoing on the polished floors. The day would not wait. The threats would not pause, and the mate bond would continue its relentless insistence. Every step he took was a step toward redemption, toward confronting the past, toward claiming a future that might yet allow Arya to forgive him, or at least trust him enough to survive what was coming. Outside, the wind carried the faint echoes of rogue howls, a reminder that danger was patient, relentless, and unyielding. Hunter inhaled deeply, steadying himself. The Alpha Heir could be many things: leader, fighter, strategist, but now he was something else entirely, a mate tasked with earning the trust of the one he had wronged. Bound together by threads of fate that could not be ignored. His eyes narrowed, resolve hardening. "I will face the rogues," he whispered to himself. "I will face the bond, and I will face her every moment." Every challenge, until the debt is paid, the corridors of Moonridge held no more solitude. The day awaited, full of danger, choices, and the fragile dance of guilt, power, and inevitable connection. And Hunter Rodriguez, for all his faults and failings, knew this: he would not let her go. Chapter 8. The Weight of Silence. The early evening settled over Moonridge with a hush that felt too deliberate, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. Arya sat on the edge of the cliff overlooking the Pacas Valley, knees drawn to her chest, eyes tracing the fading orange horizon. Her wolf trembled beneath her skin, restless, insistent. Demanding acknowledgment she refused to give. Hunter's absence was a relief and a torment all at once. The mate bond throbbed, pulsing with a rhythm that mirrored her heartbeat, a constant reminder of what she had yet to accept. Every fiber of her being screamed to resist, to deny, to protect herself from the consequences of yielding. And yet, in the quiet moments, she felt the invisible thread tugging at her, insistent, patient, impossible to ignore. She closed her eyes, trying to focus on the wind, on the distant rustle of leaves, on anything but him. Memories came unbidden, flashes of childhood laughter, moments of shared secrets with Hunter before the cruelty had begun. And then, inevitably, the darker memories, the times he had hurt her, the words that had cut deeper than any claw. The isolation that had shaped her. A sharp rustle drew her attention. Her wolf flared instantly, muscles coiling. Senses sharpening. Shadows shifted at the trelline, and the hair on her arms stood on end. The rogue, before she could react. A figure emerged from the mist, moving with stealth and intent. Its presence was deliberate, predatory, and immediately threatening. Ria's pulse quickened. She could feel the bond flare, pulling her toward Hunter, demanding his presence even as he remained elsewhere. Arya. He appeared at the edge of the clearing, eyes locked on the intruder. The bond surged, threads tangling, pulling, forcing connection even against her will. Arya drew in a breath, centering herself, forcing her wolf into submission. "I can handle this," she shouted, though her voice wavered. The rogue circled, watching, calculating. It had chosen its moment carefully, hoping to exploit weakness. Hunter's approach was deliberate, controlled. Every step measured. "The bond isn't just a chain thought, Arya," he said, voice low, carrying both warning and reassurance. "We fight together." Now, ducked reluctantly, she allowed herself to attune to him, the thread of connection anchoring her. The rogue lunged, swift and vicious, but the combined instincts of Arya and Hunter created a rhythm. A dance of defense and offense. Staff met claw. Movement and counter, movements synchronized in a way that felt both instinctual and terrifyingly precise. Arya's wolf roared. A sound she had never produced consciously before, raw and untamed. Hunter's presence steadied her, guiding her movements, reinforcing her instincts without command. They were a force, reluctant yet undeniable. The bond manifesting not as surrender but as power. The rogue faltered under their combined assault, retreating with a snarl that promised return. Arya's chest heaved, adrenaline and bond pulsations mingling, leaving her both exhilarated and wary. Hunter stepped closer, eyes intense. "Do you feel it?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "The connection ts more than fate. It as strength? And you?" He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. "You wield it beautifully. Even when you resist." Arya turned away, anger and frustration coiling in her chest. "I don't need you," she spat, though the bond pulled at her, subtle, insistent, refusing to be denied. "I never did, and I never will." Hunter's gaze softened, but the intensity remained. "You've never needed me, Arya, but together we're unstoppable." Denying it won't make it disappear. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unsaid words and unacknowledged truths. The rogue threat had been a wake-up call, but the weight of the bond pressed deeper, challenging Arya in ways she had yet to fully comprehend. Every heartbeat echoed with unspoken tension. Every inhale carried the awareness that her choices, her resistance, could shape the next encounter, the next battle, the next moment of their intertwined fates. The evening wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faintest whisper of warning. The rogues would return, and when they did, Arya would have to decide whether the bond was a curse to resist, Jura power to embrace. She clenched her fists, feeling the raw energy of her wolf surge beneath the surface. The bond was real. Hunter was real. And the rogues were out there, testing them, waiting. For the first time, Arya allowed herself a flicker of acknowledgement. not surrender, not trust, not yet, but recognition. The weight of silence was heavy, but it was also instructive. She could resist. She could fight. She could define the terms of their connection, but she could not escape it. And somewhere deep beneath the defiance, a spark of understanding ignited. The bond was not just theirs to bear, 'twas theirs to wield, in fire, in shadow, in survival. The night settled. Mist curling around the valley, the pack silent yet watchful. Arya remained on the cliff's edge, eyes fixed on the horizon where danger lingered, heart thrumming with the dual pulse of fear and power. The rogues were coming, and she would be ready. Chapter 9. A roguish Shadow Moon Ridge had never felt so alive nor so threatened. The first light of dawn barely filtered through the thick canopy of pines when the alarm rang across the valley, sharp, insistent, a signal that danger was no longer lurking in the shadows, but had stepped fully into their midst. Arya was already awake, muscles taut, wolf flickering beneath her skin with an unease she could barely contain. She had sensed it in the night, shift in the wind, the subtle vibration beneath the earth, but she had dismissed it, telling herself the rogue's earlier attack was an isolated incident. She was wrong. Hunter was already on the training grounds, pacing with the precision of a predator, scanning the tree line, every nerve coiled and ready. When he caught sight of Arya descending the cliff, his expression softened, but only briefly. The weight of the bond, insistent and taut, pulled at both of them, threading their senses together even before they spoke. "Arya," he said, voice low that urgent, carrying the command of a leader and the pull of a mate. "They're moving faster than expected. We have to—" A shriek tore through the air before he could finish. The rogues had breached the outer perimeter. Moving with unnatural speed, shadows flitting like smoke between the trees. Arya felt her wolf surge, instinct and fear merging into raw energy. Hunter was beside her in a blink, hands steadying her without restraint, the bond thrum between them intensifying. "Stay with me," he instructed. The words were simple, but the pull behind them was undeniable, a tether she could neither ignore nor break. The first rogue emerged, teeth bared, claws extended. Its movement was fluid, lethal. Arya reacted instinctively, the bond guiding her motions in ways that surprised even her. Hunter's presence beside her amplified her awareness. Every strike, every dodge perfectly synchronized. They were not just fighting, teeth were dancing, to halves of a force greater than themselves. A second rogue lunged from the shadows. Arya sidestepped, letting Hunter intercept. And in that instant, the bond surged. She felt his concern, his fear, his need, all tangled with her own. And something deeper, a current of trust she could not yet name, stirred beneath the surface. "Cover the ridge," Hunter barked. Iviel handled the flank. His movements were precis-controlled, lethal. Arya followed his guidance, instinct blending with instruction, their connection sharpening every reflex, every heartbeat. The third rogue struck, and this time Arya's wolf took over. A howl ripped from her throat, pure and commanding, reverberating through the forest. The rogue faltered, caught in the raw surge of power she barely understood she possessed. Hunter seized the moment, closing in, strikes measured, careful, keeping them in rhythm. As the last rogue fell back into the shadows, retreating with a growl of frustration, Arya's chest heaved. The adrenaline, the bond, the fight, Tikure had survived, barely, but she was changed. The thread between them had tightened, almost painfully. A constant reminder that they were linked in ways neither could fully control. Hunter turned to her, expression tense, eyes searching. "Are you all right?" His voice was quieter now, almost intimate, but threaded with the same authority that had guided them through the fight. Arya forced herself to nod, though her pulse was still racing. "Am fine," she replied, voice uneven. She did not admit that the bond had made her feel both exposed and invincible, that the rogue's attack had drawn the invisible line between resistance and surrender thinner than ever. Hunter studied her for a long moment, then gave a tight nod. "Good. We will need this focus. They will be back. And they won't be as careless." His words were a warning. But the bond pulsing beneath their skin made them more than words. Teak Nation were a shared understanding, an unspoken acknowledgment of dependence and power. The forest was quiet once more, but the tension lingered, heavy and electric. Arya glanced at Hunter, and for the first time she recognized a truth she could not deny. The bond was not just a connection, 'twas a force shaping their survival, shaping their choices, shaping the unspoken rhythm between them. And somewhere in that awareness, a flicker of something she had fought to suppress ignited. Not trust, not yet. Not forgiveness, but recognition. The rogues were out there, relentless, unyielding. And together, Hunter and she were no longer just prey or pursuer. Tecation were a storm, tethered by fate, by power, by the silent, insistent pull of the bond. Arya inhaled sharply, letting the weight of the morning, the fight, and the bond settle into her bones. She would not surrender, not completely. She would not trust him fully, not yet. But the bond had shown her its first truth. They were stronger together than apart, and the rogues were only the beginning. The wind carried a distant howl, faint but deliberate, a reminder that their enemies were patient, relentless, and watching. Arya as wolf stirred again, coiling beneath her skin with anticipation. The battle had been won, but the war of shadows, of fate, of the bond, was only beginning. Chapter 10. Trapped Together. The cavern was damp and shadowed, carved from the cliffside by some ancient hand of nature. Arya pressed her back against the cold stone, knees drawn up, every nerve firing as she tried to steady her breathing. Outside, the forest's roar, distant howls, the crackling of branches under rogue paws, was muffled, but she could feel it. A pulse in the earth that mirrored the tension in her chest. Hunter was only a few feet away, crouched, eyes sweeping every shadow, muscles taut with vigilance. The bond thrummed between them, subtle yet insistent, tugging at her resolve. Every beat of his heart seemed to echo within her. A reminder that she was tied to him in ways she had neither chosen nor fully understood. "You need to focus," he said quietly, not looking at her, voice steady yet underlined with urgency. "They'll be back. And we can't afford distractions." Arya's lips pressed into a thin line. Focus. She wanted to. Desperately, but the bond made every instinct chaotic. Every brush of proximity, every shared breath, every unspoken thought threaded through her mind, twisting her self-control into knots. She refused to look at him, refused to acknowledge the pull that threatened to drown her. Fine," she muttered, though her voice lacked conviction. Her wolf shifted beneath the surface, restless, probing, testing boundaries she refused to define. Hunter's gaze finally found her, intense and unwavering. "You don't have to fight it alone, Arya. Not here." Not now. His words carried a weight that unsettled her. They weren't demands, they were truth. And yet, accepting that truth meant surrendering a piece of herself she had guarded for years. A low growl vibrated through the cavern wall, alerting them both. The rogues were near, their movements precise, hunting with the efficiency of shadows given form. Hunteress' stance stiffened, and Arya's wolf responded in tandem, muscles coiling beneath her skin. They moved as one instinctive, the bond amplifying her senses even as her mind screamed to resist. One rogue breached the cavern mouth, and Hunter reacted instantly, blocking its path with a calculated force that sent it stumbling back. Arya's reflexes took over, a sweeping kick and a dodge, the movements guided by the invisible tether that linked them. Every step, every strike was synchronized, the bond manifesting not as submission, but as raw and undeniable power. "You're stronger than I thought," Hunter muttered, voice low, almost a half admission as he blocked another attack. The comment, innocent in tone, sparked something inside Arya, intonation, a flutter of acknowledgment. A recognition that he could see her, not just her wolf or her bond, but her. "Focus," she snapped, though her heart betrayed her, pounding with the closeness, the intensity, the undeniable rhythm that pulsed between them. The rogue retreated momentarily, calculating its next move, giving them the briefest reprieve. Hours seemed to stretch in that cavern, time bending around their proximity. They were forced to move together, fight together, even breathe together. The bond was no longer subtle, 'twill pressed against her, whispering, urging, insisting. Arya fought it with every ounce of willpower, denying the warmth creeping into her chest, denying the way his presence anchored her, steadying her in a storm she had not anticipated. At one point, Hunter extended a hand to steady her as she stumbled over uneven ground. She froze, pulse hammering, the wolf inside her snapping at the sensation of contact, at the thrill and terror of proximity. I don't need your help," she said sharply, yanking her hand away, but even as she spoke, the bond throbbed, insistently connecting them, threading through the space between heartbeats. Huntressy softened, but the intensity remained. "You don't-y? Not always. But right now, you do." He pressed further. The truth hung between them like smoke, inescapable, undeniable. The rogues tested them relentlessly, each attack sharper, faster, more coordinated than the last. Arya's wolf learned to anticipate Hunter's movements, their instincts intertwining in a dance that was frightening and exhilarating all at once. She could feel him in every breath, every step, every heartbeat. The realization forced a reluctant acknowledgment. The bond was shaping her, enhancing her, guiding her in ways her mind had resisted, but her body had embraced. By the time the sun began to rise, casting a pale light into the cavern mouth, the rogues had been repelled, retreating into the forest with a growl of frustration. Arya sank to the ground, exhaustion and adrenaline warring within her. Hunter knelt beside her, silent for a long moment, letting the bond speak where words could not. "You did well," he said finally, voice quiet, almost reverent. "We did well." Arya looked away, chest heaving. "We," she whispered, the word tasting foreign, almost impossible. Yet it lingered in the air, heavy with truth. Hunter's hand brushed hers, a fleeting, almost accidental touch that set her nerves alight. The bond flared sharply, demanding acknowledgment, demanding connection, demanding surrender, but not in the way she feared. In that brief, electric moment, she realized the bond was not just a chain or a tether, it was a reflection of what they could become together, unstoppable, unbroken, undeniable. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the exhaustion, Beneath the defiance, a flicker of acceptance ignited. Not trust, not forgiveness, not love, not yet, but recognition. The bond was theirs, whether she yielded or resisted. It had become part of them both. Outside, the wind carried the faint echo of distant howls, a reminder that danger was never far. Inside, the cavern held the warmth of survival, of proximity, of a bond that refused to be ignored. Arya closed her eyes, letting the weight of the hours settle, letting the pull of the bond remind her that she was not alone. And for the first time, she allowed herself a thought that scared and thrilled her all at once. Maybe, just maybe, they could face what was coming together. Chapter 11. The fracture widens. The early morning air carried a deceptive calm. A thin veil over the tension that coiled through Moonridge. The rogue's retreat had given the pack a fleeting sense of relief. But Arya could feel the tremors of unrest everywhere she walked. Every shadow seemed longer, every whisper sharper, every glance loaded with unspoken judgment. Hunter's presence was unavoidable, yet infuriating. He moved through the pack with authority, but with her, every command, every look, every brush of proximity pressed against the fragile walls she had built around herself. The mate bond throbbed beneath her skin, insistent, demanding attention she refused to give. "Arya," Hunter said. His tone clipped as they walked toward the training grounds. "We need to strategize. The rogues aren't finished. And the pack don't tell me what I already know," she snapped, shoulders stiff. Her wolf stirred. Coiling beneath her skin, agitated by his nearness, by the pull of the bond she was struggling to ignore. Hunter paused, dark, gaze sharp, but he did not step back. "I'm not ordering you," he said evenly. "I'm trying to keep us alive." Arya's lips pressed into a thin line. "Alive, yes, but at what cost?" The bond forced her to feel him in every breath, every heartbeat, every instinct. It made proximity unbearable and essential all at once. "I don't need saving," she hissed, voice trembling despite herself. "You will if you keep denying what is between us," he countered, jaw tight. Eyes dark with frustration and something more dangerous, desperation. The words were edged. But the bond carried them like a current that ran deeper than his tone. Their argument drew the attention of the pack. Wolves shifted uneasily, sensing the tension, sensing that the alpha heir and his mate, whether she admitted it or not, were not in harmony. Whispers began to rise. Subtle yet insistent, questioning authority, questioning loyalty, questioning whether the alpha could lead if his mate resisted him. The rogue threat was no longer just a shadow in the forest. He had become a mirror reflecting every fracture within the pack. Alliances shifted, old grudges surfaced, and the slightest misstep could turn suspicion into betrayal. Arya felt it all. The weight of expectation, the silent judgments, the unspoken rules she had never agreed to play by. Hunter's hand brushed hers as he passed to adjust a training obstacle. The contact, brief and seemingly accidental, ignited the bond with a sharp, undeniable flare. Arya recoiled slightly, heart hammering, wolf snapping beneath the surface. He noticed, of course, his eyes darkening, but instead of retreating, he held her gaze. "You're mine," he said, voice low, steady, carrying the weight of inevitability rather than aggression. The words pressed against her, an assertion, a warning. "A promise." Arya turned away, jaw tight. "I'm not yours," she whispered, though every fiber of her being screamed against the lie. The bond surged, pressing, insistent, demanding acknowledgment she refused to grant. Training continued, but the air between them was charged. Every movement, a negotiation. Every glance, a battle of wills. Wolves sparred around them, oblivious or indifferent to the undercurrent of tension that threatened to erupt at any moment. Later, during a brief break, Arya found herself alone at the edge of the forest, chest heaving, mind spinning. The bond pulled at her relentlessly, threading through her thoughts, threading through her instincts, threading through the fear and frustration she could not name. Hunter appeared then, silent, stepping out of the shadows like he had always known where to find her. "Arya," he said quietly, tone stripped of command, softened by the bond, by the shared survival they had just endured. "We can't let this come between us, not now, not with what is coming." She shook her head, refusing to meet his eyes. "It's already between us," she murmured. I can't eat." Her voice broke. Wolf growling low beneath her ribs, primal and fierce. "I can't let this bond control me." Hunter's gaze softened. But the intensity did not fade. "It is not control," he said, stepping closer, careful to respect her space, yet drawn by the same force that had made their fight seamless hours ago. "It is connection. You feel it, Arya, whether you admit it or not, and it is stronger than fear, stronger than resentment, stronger than anything they, Judge or we, can throw at us." Her breath hitched, the wolf stirring, torn between resistance and acceptance. The rogues were out there, the pack was fracturing, and yet all she could focus on was the pull of him, the undeniable rhythm of the bond that bound them together against her will. A distant howl snapped her attention back to reality. The rogues were regrouping, moving faster, smarter, more lethal. Hunter tensed, muscles coiled, eyes scanning the horizon. "We'll deal with them," he said, voice steady, carrying authority and something warmer beneath the surface. Together, Arya nodded reluctantly, Wolf growling low. But in that acknowledgment she felt a small tremor of truth. They were stronger together, whether she wanted it or not. And the fracture between them, between trust and defiance, between fear and desire, was widening, threatening to consume them both if left unchecked. But for now they had to survive, and survival demanded they face the rogues, face the Paiki, and, inevitably, face the bond that refused to be ignored. The forest stretched before them, quiet yet tense. Every rustle a reminder that danger lurked in every shadow. Arya inhaled sharply, letting the weight of the morning, of the bond, and of her own conflicted emotions settle. The fracture had widened, yes, but it had also revealed a truth she could no longer deny. She and Hunter were inexorably linked, and the rogues were only the beginning of the trials that awaited them. Chapter 12. The First Save. The evening air was thick with unease, shadows stretching across the training grounds like tendrils of warning. The rogue attacks had left the pack vigilant, every wolf on edge, yet every heartbeat measured against the threat lingering just beyond the forest's edge. Arya moved cautiously through the clearing, her senses taut. The mate bond hummed beneath her skin and for fun, an invisible tether pulling her toward Hunter, even as resentment and fear made her resist. She had tried to focus on the drills, on the training routines, but her thoughts were a storm of conflicting impulses, trust, denial, anger. Attraction, intertwined. Hunter appeared at the perimeter, his figure cutting a sharp silhouette against the dying light. His eyes scanned the trelline, assessing, calculating. Even in that moment, the bond thrummed between them, quiet yet insistent, reminding them both that distance was a lie. "You're going too far," he called, voice steady. carrying the authority of an alpha and the care of someone who understood the pull of the bond better than she did. "I can handle it," Arya snapped, ears flicking toward the faint rustle in the underbrush. Her wolf stirred beneath the surface, sensing the tremor of danger she could not yet define. Hunter's eyes darkened, tension coiling through his frame. Arya, but before he could finish, a shadow erupted from the trees, Rogue. Moving faster than any wolf of the pack should, eyes glinting with malice. Arya froze, too stunned to react. The figure lunged. Teeth bared, claws aiming for her throat. Instinct screamed, and yet she was slower than she should have been. The roguish presence hit her senses with a precision that left her off balance. Panic and the bond surged together, a chaotic, burning mix that left her trembling. Hunter moved like a shadow himself, faster than she could track, intercepting the rogue with a ferocity that stunned even the veterans nearby. He collided with the intruder, muscles straining, eyes locking with Urias in a silent warning. "Stay back. Stay alive. Trust me." Urias' breath caught. The bond flared sharply. Pain and connection intertwined. Every nerve, every heartbeat, every instinct screamed at her that he was hers. And if she did not want it. Hunter's hands moved with practiced precision, felling the rogue with controlled strikes, but a second assailant emerged from the trees, a blur of motion aimed at Arya. She spun, but the rogue was faster, teeth snapping perilously close. Time slowed. Her pulse roared in her ears. The bond pulsed like a drumbeat, connecting them in ways words could not convey. She felt Hunter's presence in every fiber of her being, surge of his wolf, the certainty of his touch. The unspoken promise that he would not let her fall. Then, a blur of movement, Hunter slammed into the second rogue, knocking them aside and pinning them with strength that bordered on inhuman. Arya stumbled backward, heart hammering, wolf howling low in protest and relief. "Are you—" she began, but words failed her. Hunter's gaze met hers, dark and intense, carrying layers of warning, anger, relief, and an undeniable claim. "You have to trust me," he said. Voice low, almost a growl. "You cannot fight alone." Arya shook her head, trembling. I didn't, Tino." The bond tightened, almost painfully, dragging her closer to the truth she had tried to deny. She could not deny him, not now, not after this. Hunter reached for her, hands steadying her, wolf brushing against her instincts, anchoring her in ways she couldn't yet name. "It is not weakness to accept help," he said softly, almost tenderly. "It tests survival, and right now, survival means we're together." The rogue threat had been neutralized, but the adrenaline lingered, pulsing through the clearing like electricity. The pack, watching silently, felt the tension radiating from the pair, late bond now undeniable to everyone, even if Arya refused to accept it openly. Arya's chest heaved, the bond throbbing beneath her skin, confusing and irresistible. She wanted to resist, to push away, to deny the connection that had marked her life with its relentless presence. Yet, in that moment, looking at Hunter, her tormentor, her protector, her mate, she realized that resistance was no longer simple. Hunter's hand lingered near hers, a silent reassurance, a tether she could not break even if she wanted to. "We face them," he said, voice steady, resolute. "Together, always." "You don't have to do this alone." She wanted to protest, wanted to insist she could. But the bond surged. Undeniable and relentless, whispering truths she was not ready to admit. And for the first time, in the heart of danger, With rogues retreating into the shadows, Arya felt the pull of surrender, not to love, not yet, but to survival. To the inevitability that Hunter could not let her fall. The forest settled again, the echoes of claws and growls fading, leaving only the quiet hum of the bond and the heavy rhythm of their hearts. A moment suspended between fear and acknowledgement, a moment that would define the rift between them, how it would fracture, heal, and ultimately forge the bond they could no longer deny. And in that suspended space, Arya understood, in a way that frightened her, the first save was never just about life, 'twas about the threads that bound them. Threads that would not unravel, threads that demanded surrender, whether she was ready or not. Chapter 13. An Unwanted Confession. The cabin was quiet, save for the soft crackle of the fireplace and the uneven rhythm of Hunter's breathing. Shadows danced along the walls, thrown by the flickering flames, but they felt heavier tonight, pressing in with an almost tangible weight. Arya sat beside him, hands carefully bandaging the gash across his shoulder. Her wolf stirred beneath the surface, alert and restless. Her pulse raced, the bond thrumming like a drumbeat in her chest, echoing every motion, every breath, every heartbeat of the boy lying before her. Hunter's eyes opened slightly, just enough to catch hers. Pain etched across his features, yet there was a softness there, an almost desperate vulnerability she had never seen. "You didn't have to come after me," she whispered, voice barely audible over the fire. Her fingers trembled slightly as she worked, though she tried to steady them, tried to appear calm, tried to ignore the pull that made her want to lean closer, to be near him in a way she both feared and craved. "I couldn't let you face them alone," he replied, voice rough from the pain and the chase. He paused, throat tight, eyes searching hers as if weighing whether to risk the words. "You reckless? Always have been. And always will be." Arya's jaw tightened. "I can take care of myself," she said, though the words rang hollow. Her wolf, quiet but insistent, growled beneath her skin. She could feel him, bond threading between them, pressing against her resistance, reminding her that they were tied together in ways she could not ignore. Hunter exhaled sharply, a low groan of frustration. "You're stubborn," he muttered, but there was no accusation in his tone, only weariness, almost like a confession he hadn't intended to make. Arya froze at that heart-lurching. Stubborn. It was neither praise nor cold. Ticket was acknowledgement, recognition. And the weight of that acknowledgement pressed against her chest in a way she hadn't expected. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said softly, voice almost breaking. "I know you're afraid. I know you don't trust me, but the bond, it doesn't lie. And neither do I." Her hands faltered over the bandages. The bond flared sharply, painful and insistent, threading through her nerves, threading through her instincts, threading through her fear. She could feel his wolf, powerful, relentless, claiming her in ways that left her breathless, angry, and uncomfortably aware of every inch of his presence. "I don't," she started, but words failed her. The confession hung in the air, unspoken yet heavier than any chain. Huntressy softened, pain and emotion colliding in their depths. "I know you hate me," he admitted quietly, the words cutting through the space between them. "I know I hurt you. I know His voice broke, low and unsteady. "I've been trying to fix it. Trying to fix us. But it doesn't matter what I want. You don't owe me anything, except maybe a chance to show that I can be different." Arya's breath caught. The bond surged violently, pulling at her very core, dragging her toward an admission she refused to give. Her wolf growled low, frustrated, demanding, insistent. Every instinct screamed at her to move closer, to trust him, to acknowledge the threads that connected them beyond reason. Her voice trembled, choking on the weight of the words she could not form. She wanted to pull away, to deny, to resist the pull that felt like fire beneath her skin. Yet every time she looked at him, every time she felt the rhythm of his heartbeat through the bond, every time she sensed the desperation and guilt and devotion in his presence, the walls she had built around herself faltered. Hunter's hand twitched, reaching for hers but stopping just short, respect and restraint coiled in every movement. "You don't have to say it now," he whispered. "Just let me be here. That's all I'm asking." For now, the firelight flickered, casting long shadows across the cabin. Outside, the forest was alive with distant rustles. A reminder that the rogues were still out there, still hunting, still waiting. But inside, the space between them, tense, fragile, charged, was an entirely different battlefield. Arya exhaled slowly, feeling the bond's insistent pulse beneath her skin. She could not yet surrender, could not yet admit the pull she felt, could not yet forgive him entirely, but she allowed herself a single, quiet acknowledgment. The threads tying her to Hunter were real, and no amount of resistance could sever them. Hunter's eyes softened further, a quiet gratitude shining through the pain and tension. "Thank you," he murmured, barely above a whisper. "For letting me stay," she nodded, lips pressed together, heart hammering. Her wolf shifted beneath the surface, quiet but watchful, sensing the first stirrings of acceptance, of trust, of the unspoken truth that the bond, relentless, insistent, undeniable, was no longer something she could ignore. Outside, the wind carried the first whispers of a storm. Distant and low, a prelude to the chaos that would soon test their bond, their loyalty, and their survival. Inside, the cabin remained a fragile sanctuary, a space where confession, guilt, and unspoken desire mingled with the quiet pulse of a connection that neither could fully resist. And in that fragile, burning moment, Arya realized that some confessions, unwanted though they might be, could not be denied Nate when the threads of fate had woven them together in ways beyond choice, beyond reason, beyond fear. Chapter 14. The Rogue Plot. The forest beyond the Pacas borders had never felt so alive, so menacing. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, every distant howl carried the weight of danger. A warning that the rogues were no longer lurking, Tikure were moving, calculating, striking with a precision that unsettled even the most seasoned alphas. Arya and Hunter stood at the edge of the clearing, overlooking the territory with tense vigilance. The bond hummed beneath her skin, a constant reminder that proximity to him was no longer a choice but a necessity, whether she liked it or not. "They're organized," Hunter said quietly, voice steady but laced with concern, "to coordinated for just random attacks. Someone inside our borders is giving them information." Arya's stomach tightened. "Inside?" she echoed, disbelief and unease twisting her gut. She had always assumed the pack was a single unit, that loyalty ran deep and unshakable. But the bond thrummed with warning, and her wolf growled low in her chest, sensing the invisible threat of betrayal before her mind could comprehend it. Huntress' gaze swept over her, sharp and searching. "I need you focused," he said. "If they catch us unprepared," his words trailed off, leaving the threat hanging like smoke in the air. Arya swallowed, nodding, though the pulse of fear and frustration coiled tightly in her chest. The bond tugged insistently, urging her to trust, to lean on him, to acknowledge the connection she still fought to deny. She clenched her fists, trying to maintain control. She was no longer just fighting rogues. She was fighting herself. The first signs of the rogue's advance came silently, almost imperceptibly. A flash of movement behind the trees, a faint shimmer of claws in the moonlight. And suddenly the tranquility of the forest was shattered. Wolves barked warnings, the pack rallied into formation. And Arya felt her pulse spike, every instinct screaming danger. Hunter moved before she could think, body cutting through the chaos with a predator's precision. His wolf surged beneath the surface, sinking with hers in a subtle, almost imperceptible rhythm that sent shivers down her spine. Every motion was perfectly coordinated, every command unspoken yet understood. But the attack was not just brute force, it was strategy. Rogues hit weak points. Corners of the territory left vulnerable, signs that reinforced Hunter's suspicion there was a traitor among them. Arya's wolf growled low, sensing the hidden eyes that tracked them, the shadows that moved with intent. The bond pulled sharply, painful and demanding, anchoring her attention to Hunter, even as her heart threatened to betray her with fear, frustration, and the unacknowledged stirrings of desire. A rogue leapt from the trellin, aiming for Hunter's flank. Arya reacted instinctively, shifting mid-motion, claws slashing with precision. The rogue stumbled back, snarling, but more were emerging. Her heart raced. The bond hummed, connecting her awareness to Huntress in a way that was disorienting yet powerful. Huntress' voice cut through the chaos, low and commanding. "Stay with me." And she did. The fight unfolded like a dance of shadows and teeth, firelight and moonlight blending into a cinematic blur. Each strike, each dodge, each leap carried weight beyond survival. He carried the tension of their bond, the silent acknowledgement that they were inextricably linked, whether through destiny or insistence of fate. Then came the moment that froze Arya mid-motion, a figure she recognized too late, moving through the chaos with ease, eyes gleaming with intent. Someone from within it. Her chest tightened, wolf growling, pulse spiking. The traitor. Hunter intercepted, moving with unerring precision, body pressing against hers in the collision that saved her life and further tangled their connection. She felt the bond flare violently, sharp and unyielding, as if warning her, "You cannot fight this alone. Not now, not ever." Breath heaving, she met his eyes. There was no accusation there, only an unspoken acknowledgement. They were bound together, for better or worse, in ways neither could escape. The rogue threat was momentarily repelled, but the message was clear. The pack was compromised, danger was inside, and the bond that Arya still resisted was no longer just a matter of choice. It was survival, instinct, and inevitability. Hunter's hand found hers, fingers brushing in a gesture that was equal parts reassurance and claim. "We need to find them," he said quietly, voice low, sorrow steady, "before they strike again. And before they tear the pack apart from the inside." Arya nodded, wolf stirring beneath the surface. Heat bore sinking with his bond pulsing with undeniable insistence. The danger outside was mirrored by the storm inside her, conflicting emotions, fear, and a growing awareness of the connection that refused to let go. Outside, the forest breathed in shadows and whispers. Inside, Arya realized with reluctant clarity, the rogue plot was more than just an attack. Twitcher was the crucible in which the threads of their bond would be tested, strained, and ultimately forged. And the bond was no longer a whisper beneath her skin. It was a roar, insistent and demanding, marking her not just as his mate, but as a partner in a war that had only just begun. Chapter 15. The Alpha's Choice. The council chamber was tense, the air thick with the scent of authority and unspoken rivalry. Stone walls echoed with murmurs of wolves who had seen generations rise and fall, and tonight every eye was on Hunter, Heir, standing at the precipice of a choice that could define the pack's future. Arya stood behind him, her presence quiet but insistent, a shadow tethered to him by the invisible threads of the bond. She could feel the subtle stirrings beneath her skin, the pulse of their connection sharpening with every whispered accusation and every watchful glance. Her wolf growled softly, sensing the stakes that extended far beyond personnel grievances. "You call this leadership?" growled a counselor, his voice edged with disdain. "Threats at our borders, rogues infiltrating our territory, and your mate, harbors resentment that could fracture our unity." Hunter's jaw tightened. Every word, every accusation, landed like a strike meant to test his resolve. But he would not falter. Not now. Not when the pack's survival, Jiraiya's safety, hung in the balance. Resentment? His voice cut through the room. Measured but firm. "You speak as if loyalty and understanding are commodities to be traded. Arya has been wronged, yes. But she is not the problem. Ignoring the threat outside, while blaming her for the pack's instability, is what endangers us." A sharp murmur ran through the council. Some eyes gleamed with approval. Others narrowed in silent challenge. The Alpha, an imposing figure whose presence alone demanded obedience, leaned forward, scrutinizing the young heir. "You defend her at the risk of your position," the Alpha said quietly, though every word resonated through the chamber. "Do you understand what this means?" Hunter's gaze did not waver. "I understand exactly what it means," he replied, voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel. "I choose the pack's survival over pride, the truth over convenience, and I choose to stand by her, not because she is mine, but because she is right. And the bond between us is not a weakness. It is our strength." The room fell into a silence that was almost unbearable. Whispers of dissent and surprise rippled through the council members. Arya's chest tightened. She could feel the bond surge violently beneath her skin, a sharp, insistent reminder that Hunter's choice was more than political, 'twas personal, binding them together in ways she could no longer deny. A counselor rose, steps echoing sharply against the stone floor. "And if she rejects him?" The question hung in the air, loaded with accusation and threat. "What then? Will you sacrifice the pack for your personnel, attachments?" Hunter's gaze swept the room, eyes flashing with a mix of defiance and calculation. "Then I fight," he said simply. "I fight to protect her, to protect the pack, and to prove that strength is not measured by pride alone. The bond we share, Twictor, does not weaken me. It strengthens the PK, and if any of you cannot see that, perhaps your loyalty lies elsewhere." The Alpha studied him for long moments, the tension stretching until it felt almost tangible. Then, with a measured nod, he spoke. "Very well, Hunter Rodriguez. Your choice is noted. But remember, the pack's safety is paramount. If your personal attachments endanger it." He let the sentence hang, unfinished yet clear in its threat. Hunter exhaled slowly, muscles tensing and releasing in a silent ritual of control. He turned, and his gaze met Arya's. The bond flared sharply, urgent, insistent, threading through every nerve, every thought, every heartbeat. She felt the unspoken message, the acknowledgement that he had risked everything for her, not for duty, not for obligation, but because he could not do otherwise. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly, stepping closer, voice low, carrying both concern and something deeper she had not yet named. Arya's throat tightened. I think so," she whispered. Though the words felt fragile, inadequate, the bond pulsed insistently, reminding her that she was no longer just an observer in this life, but a participant, a force, a partner bound by threads she could not sever. Outside, the forest waited, shadows shifting with unseen threats. Inside, the chamber remained charged with tension, a crucible testing loyalty, courage, and the unspoken power of their connection. And as the council dispersed, murmurs trailing behind them like the ghost of a storm, Arya realized the truth she had been resisting. Hunter's choice had changed everything, and the bond between them had become a force neither could ignore. In the quiet aftermath, with the echoes of power and expectation lingering in the stone walls, the bond flared again, demanding attention, demanding acknowledgement, demanding surrender. Arya closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of his heartbeat sync with hers, feeling the sharp and unyielding insistence of the mate bond. And somewhere deep within, beneath fear, doubt, and lingering resentment, she understood that the choices made here tonight would ripple far beyond the chamber, shaping not just their bond, but the fate of the pack itself. Chapter 16. Secrets in Blood. The moon hung low over the pack's territory, casting long, pale shadows across the forest floor. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the wind, carried with it an undercurrent of tension that was almost tangible. Arya moved carefully, senses on high alert. Wolf beneath her skin stirring in uneasy anticipation. The bond hummed sharply, tugging at her awareness, urging her to follow Hunter, who led the way with the quiet confidence of someone born to command. Hunter's footsteps were deliberate, measured, yet there was urgency in his posture that Arya could not ignore. They approached the ruins of the old pack archives, a place long sealed, whispered about only in stories of betrayal and secrets best left buried. Tonight, however, the lock on the past had been forced, the silence broken. "Are you sure about this?" Arya asked, voice barely above a whisper, her pulse quickening. The bond pulsed in tandem with her fear and curiosity, sharp and insistent. Hunter glanced at her, eyes dark and unreadable in the moonlight. "We need the truth," he said. "If the rogues are targeting us, it is not random. There is a reason, and the answers are here." Inside, the archive smelled of dust, old parchment, and the faint, metallic tang of blood long dried. Hunter's hand brushed across the shelves, scanning the ancient records with meticulous care. Arya followed, feeling the weight of history pressing against her, pressing against the fragile sense of security she had clung to for so long. Then she saw it, a sealed ledger, marked with a crest she recognized immediately. Her parents' crest. Her stomach twisted. Her wolf growled softly, a warning she couldn't ignore. Hunter's gaze met hers. "This is your family," he said carefully, almost reverently. "The rogue's vendetta isn't against the pack, it is against you, against your bloodline." Arya's breath caught. Memories she had buried deep, fragments of whispered warnings, hurried goodbyes. A night of screams she had never fully understood rose to the surface. Her heart hammered against her ribs, every beat resonating with shocks disbelief and a growing, uncomfortable understanding. "You're saying my family?" she whispered, voice trembling. "The attacks, they're personal?" Hunter nodded. His jaw tight. "Your parents' decisions, their alliances. Someone has been waiting for the right moment. The rogues have been gathering strength, biding their time, and now they see an opportunity to finish what began long before we were born." The bond pulsed sharply, painfully, as if echoing her inner turmoil. She felt a surge of anger, confusion, and a reluctant pull toward him, the constant reminder that despite every reason to resist, they were tethered, inseparable in ways she could neither escape nor deny. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" she asked, voice breaking slightly. "Why was I left in the dark?" Hunter stepped closer, hand brushing against hers in a gesture that carried both comfort and claim. "Because knowing might have put you at risk sooner," he said softly, "and because I wasn't here. I didn't have the chance to protect you before, but I can now," Wolf growled, the sharp, insistent pull of the bond echoing her thoughts. She had lived with shadows all her life, building walls against trust, against pain, against connection. And yet here he was, standing beside her, a tether to the past she had never fully understood, and a guide through the dangers that now threatened the future. Hunter opened the ledger carefully, revealing pages stained with age and secrets. Names, alliances, treaties, easy pointing toward a single, devastating truth. The rogue attacks were meticulously planned, orchestrated by someone who had a vendetta against Arya's bloodline and the Pack's leadership. Arya's hands trembled as she traced the faded ink, wolf instincts flaring in tandem with her human mind. "So, all this," she whispered, "all the danger, the attacks, it was never random. It was me." "It's always been me." Then Hunter's grip on her hand tightened, grounding her, anchoring her in the moment. "It is not just you," he said quietly. "It is both of us. The bond chose us for a reason. Together, we're stronger. And together, we can face what is coming." Her chest rose and fell rapidly, emotions colliding, fear, relief, anger, and a reluctant, growing recognition of the bond that tied her to him. The rogue attacks were not only a threat to the pact, were a mirror reflecting the truths she had avoided for years. A crucible that demanded she confront her past and embrace the power she had never fully claimed. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faint scent of the rogues moving closer, their presence imminent. Arya's wolf stirred, coiling beneath her skin, instinct merging with the unyielding insistence of the mate bond. She inhaled sharply, meeting Hunter's gaze. "Then we fight," she said, voice steadying despite the storm within. "Not just for the payche, not just for me, but for us." Hunter's lips curved slightly, a fleeting acknowledgement of her courage and their shared destiny. The bond surged, sharp and insistent, threading through every thought, every heartbeat, every nerve. And for the first time, Arya did not resist. Together, they stepped from the archives, the weight of secrets now a weapon, the pull of the bond a guiding force. Ready to confront the rogues who had dared to target her family, dared to test the limits of their connection in the fires yet to come. Chapter 17. The Breaking Point. The moon had dipped low behind a veil of clouds, and the night air pressed against Arya like a living thing. She stood at the edge of the clearing, clutching the ledger she had barely begun to comprehend, her pulse a rapid drum in her chest. Every name, every alliance, every revelation etched into the pages felt like a weight pressing into her bones. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, restless and raw, sensing the danger, the betrayal, the threads of violence that had been woven long before she had been born. The bond pulsed sharply, insistent, tethering her to Hunter in ways that felt both comforting and suffocating. Hunter stepped closer, his shadow falling over her, broad and protective. "Arya," he said gently, voice low, measured, carrying the weight of both urgency and patience. "You can't efface this alone." She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "I faced everything alone," she whispered. "You think you can protect me from this? From the truth? From what they did to my family? I've carried it all without you. And now it is supposed to matter that we're mates, that your bond ties you to me?" The wind rustled the trees, carrying the faint scent of distant movement, rogues perhaps, testing the edges of the packa's borders. Her wolf growled, instinct flaring, but it was the human pain, betrayal, confusion, anger. Trone roared louder. Hunter reached out, hand hovering just above hers. He didn't touch her yet. He waited, letting her control the pace, letting her choose when to allow him in. "The bond doesn't make you weak," he said quietly. "It is not a chain to bind you, TKS a thread that can anchor you. But only if you let it." Arya's hands trembled as she dropped the ledger to the ground. The pages spilled, curling slightly in the night air, the inked names staring at her like accusing eyes. "Anchor me?" she echoed bitterly. "I've been anchored my whole life, anchored by lies, by silence, by people who claimed to care and then abandoned me when it mattered most. You think a bond is going to erase that?" Her wolf howled softly, a ripple of instinct mingling with her raw emotion. The bond surged, pulling at her, insisting, refusing to let her retreat. Every nerve in her body screamed with tension, her human mind clashing with the animal instinct that demanded surrender. Hunter's voice broke through the storm inside her. "No," he said firmly. "It won't erase anything. It won't undo the past. But it can give us a chance, together face what is coming, to fight, to survive." Arya's breath hitched. The ledger lay forgotten at her feet. Her eyes locked on his, and for the first time in hours. The chaos in her chest met a steady, unwavering presence. The bond pulsed again, sharp, insistent, threading through every thought, every heartbeat. She could feel it tugging, demanding acknowledgement, demanding surrender, demanding that she face not only the danger outside, but the storm within herself. She started, voice faltering. "I don't know if I can, if I am ready." Hunter stepped closer, closing the small distance between them, his hand finally brushing hers. The contact was electric, a spark that set her nerves alight. "You don't have to be ready," he said softly. "You just have to trust that I won't let go. That we can face this together, one step at a time." Her wolf howled, a low, resonant sound that vibrated through her chest. The bond flared in response, sharp, insistent, as if acknowledging the truth in Hunter's words. Her heart raced, fear and anger mingling with something she couldn't name, something fierce, something protective, something undeniably alive. Tears pricked her eyes, blurring the ledger, the forest, the night. But for the first time she didn't turn away. She let the bond pull at her, let it thread through her pain and fear, threading Hunter into the very core of her being. She whispered again, voice trembling but steadier. "I can't promise. I won't run. But I'll try. I try to face it." With you, Hunter's lips curved in a fleeting, relieved smile. He didn't say anything more. He let the bond, the connection, the quiet understanding speak for both of them. The wolf beneath her skin coiled, tensed, and finally settled, its instincts in line with hers, their hearts in sync. Outside, the wind carried distant sounds, movements at the edges of the pack's territory, rogues testing their defenses. But in the clearing, in that fragile, electric space, the chaos of the world was held at bay. For now. And for the first time since the ledger had revealed the brutal truths of her family's past, Arya felt the possibility of control, of choice, of strength. The bond was no longer an unwelcome tether. It was a thread of survival, a lifeline, a force she could wield, not just with Hunter, but with herself. Her fingers brushed against his, holding on, not just to him, but to the possibility of facing the darkness that loomed ahead. Together. The night stretched on, still and tense, but within it, a quiet, insistent power had awakened. And Arya, for the first time in years, felt it within her. The breaking point had come, track she had survived. Chapter 18. Through fire, the night air was thick with the scent of smoke and tension. The rogue pack had struck without warning, tearing through the borders of the Alpha territory with precision and brutality. Trees splintered under their assault, and the distant cries of wolves echoed like a chorus of fear across the forest. Arya's senses flared. Every nerve in her body screamed with alarm. Her wolf beneath her, skin coiling like a spring ready to snap. Hunter moved beside her, steps silent, eyes scanning the chaos with a calculated intensity. The bond pulsed sharply between them, insistent, urging her forward even as her instincts screamed to flee. Tonight, there would be no running. Tonight, the bond would demand she fight. "Stay close," Hunter whispered, voice low but commanding. "Stick with me, Arya." "Don't he let go." Her fingers brushed against his as they sprinted through the forest, and the contact anchored her, letting the bond thread through her fear. The first wave of rogues crashed against the pack's defenses, a blur of snarling teeth, shifting bodies, and the sharp scent of anger and blood. Arya's wolf surged to the surface, instincts merging with her human mind. She felt her senses sharpen, the rogue's positions, their intentions, the faint tremor of fear beneath their aggression. The bond flared, a tether to Hunter. And in that moment she understood, pull she had resisted for so long was not just a connection, it was power. A channel to focus her instincts, to guide her, to fight. Hunter was moving ahead, taking down rogue after rogue with precise, controlled strikes. His eyes flicked to her, checking, ensuring, even as he fought. "Now, Arya," he shouted, instinctively. She lunged, teeth bared, claws extended. The wolf within her surged, guided by the bond and the rhythm of Hunter beside her. She struck with precision, moving through the chaos with a grace that startled even herself. Rogue after rogue fell, the tide of the battle shifting with every synchronized motion between them. Fire flared in the distance, trees ablaze, brush pruning, the air thick with smoke. Arya's heart pounded, adrenaline and instinct merging into clarity. She moved closer to Hunter, shoulder to shoulder, their bond humming sharply. A pulse of shared intent that made them more than individuals, and there were a single force, a single storm. One rogue leapt from the shadows, fangs glinting. Arya twisted instinctively, claws raking across its flank, her wolf snarling, teeth sinking with precision. The rogue's howl of pain echoed, a mix of fear and fury. She felt the bond tighten as Hunter struck from the side, bringing another down. The forest seemed alive at every sound. Every shadow, every flicker of movement feeding into her senses. The bond sharpened her perception, threaded her instincts to huntress, creating a rhythm, a flow she had never known she could access. And in that flow, she felt something else, a fierce, undeniable clarity. This was power. This was control. This was survival. A second wave of rogues surged, but Arya met them with a newfound resolve. She no longer hesitated, no longer doubted the bond that had haunted her and Hunter's presence that had once been unbearable. Together, they moved as one, the rogue pack faltering against the synchronized fury and precision of maiden wolf. Hunter's voice cut through the chaos, low and urgent. "Arya, up here?" She followed, leaping over a fallen log to find Hunter grappling with a particularly large rogue. His strength alone was impressive, but the bond pulsed, guiding her. She struck from behind, claws sinking deep, and the rogue fell, snarling, defeated. They stood for a moment, chest heaving, adrenaline coursing through their veins, eyes locking in an unspoken acknowledgement. The bond pulsed, a fierce, rhythmic heartbeat that threaded through both of them. They had survived the first onslaught. But the fire, both literal and metaphorical, was far from over. Arya looked around, chest rising and falling. The ledger from the archives still clutched in her mind. The secrets it had revealed had forced this moment, had pushed her to a breaking point, and now, through fire and chaos, she had claimed her place beside Hunter, not as a victim, not as a pawn, but as a warrior in her own right. The rogue attacks were not random. Teaknester were deliberate, calculated, and far from over. But for the first time, Arya felt the bond not as a burden, but as a weapon, a thread connecting her to strength, to power, to Hunter, and to the future she would fight to protect. The smoke curled around them, the forest groaning under the assault, but amid the chaos, Arya drew a steadying breath. The bond pulsed again, sharp and insistent, threading through her fear and adrenaline, a lifeline, a command, a promise. And as she turned to face the next wave of rogues, Hunter's hand brushing against hers in silent reassurance. Arya knew, no matter the fire, no matter the chaos, they would face it together. The mate bond was no longer just a connection. 'Twas a force, and tonight she had finally begun to wield it. Chapter 19. The Rogue Plot. The forest leerily silent the night after the assault, as if it were holding its breath. The air was thick with the lingering scent of smoke, blood, and damp earth. Rio's wolf prowled beneath her skin, restless, its instincts humming with warning and anticipation. Every shadow seemed alive, every rustle a potential threat. She could feel the bond thrumming sharply, a thread pulling her toward danger, toward truth. Hunter moved beside her, silent and deliberate, eyes scanning the tree line. His jaw was tight, his mind calculating, unraveling the implications of the rogue attacks. "They're organized," he murmured. "This isn't random. Someone inside the pack is helping them." Arya's breath caught. She had feared as much. The ledger and the whispered rumors aligning too perfectly. Her pulse quickened, the bond tightening as if sensing the danger Hunter had just spoken aloud. "Inside?" she asked, voice low, barely a whisper. Who would betray us?" Hunter shook his head, frustration flickering across his features. "That is what we need to find out. If the pack itself is fractured, the rogues are only the beginning. Someone is pulling the strings. I intend to uncover them before more lives are lost." The clearing they had claimed as temporary refuge was a sanctuary of shadows. Trees rose like sentinels around them. The moonlight dappled through leaves, casting fragmented patterns that danced over their tense expressions. Arya's fingers brushed the hilt of the dagger she had learned to wield alongside Hunter, and the bond pulsed, insistent. Almost urgent, threading her focus, sharpening her senses. "We need to split," Hunter said after a moment. "You take the northern perimeter, Ashanditiel check the southern, keep the bond active, let it guide you. Alert me if anything changes." Arya swallowed, the weight of responsibility pressing down. The bond hummed in response, connecting her to Hunter in a delicate thread of instinct, urging her forward, warning her, guiding her. "I can do this," she whispered, more to herself than him. "We can do this." The northern edge of the forest was dense. Shadows thickened deep it. Arya moved silently, every step measured, ears straining for whispers, snaps, or the faintest stir of rogue presence. The ledgeress revelations echoed in her mind, names, alliances, old vendettas that had festered in silence. Someone had used those fractures, manipulating loyalties, feeding chaos to the rogues like a puppet master guiding marionettes, and then she felt it, a subtle shift in the wind. The faintest trace of movement in the trees. Her wolf-stirred instincts flaring. The bond pulsed sharply, an urgent thread vibrating through her nerves. Hunter? Danger? She wasn't alone, but neither was he. From the shadows, a figure emerged, cloaked in dark fabric, its presence deliberate and calculated. Arya froze, claws flexing beneath her skin. Senses flaring. The figure stepped forward into the pale moonlight, and her heart sank. A counselor from the Alpha's own court, someone she had trusted in small ways, grinned, eyes cold, calculating. "Looking for me?" The figure's voice was smooth, almost casual, but every word dripped with menace. Arya's wolf growled Loluga, a rumble deep in her chest, and the bond pulled her toward Hunter, demanding acknowledgement, commanding action. She lunged instinctively, claws out, teeth bared. The figure dodged with practiced ease, moving like shadow, their smirk and wavering. "You're fast," the figure said, circling, "but you're still just a girl." Bonded or not, the bond pulsed again, a thread of warning and power threading through her. Knitting her instincts to Hunter's, she felt him, alert, sharp, ready, tready, together. They were no longer to separate beings, but a force, a single entity, a coordinated storm of wolf and human, mind and muscle. Instinct and strategy. Hunter's voice came through the bond, a low hum that vibrated in her mind. "Don't he let fear cloud you. Strike together." Arya nodded subtly, moving in tandem with the bond's rhythm. They attacked, coordinated, striking from angles the counselor could not anticipate. Her claws met his defenses just as Hunter's hands gripped, subduing the rogue counselor in a synchronized strike. "You're too late," the counselor hissed, struggling against their combined strength. The rogues, the plans, they're already in motion. "You can't stop it now." Hunter's eyes narrowed, cold and unyielding. "We'll see about that." Arya's wolf flared beneath her skin, instincts and human intent merging seamlessly. The counselor's smirk faltered, just enough. She pressed, guided by the bond, striking decisively. They disarmed him, binding him in the moonlight, their breaths sharp and synchronized, hearts pounding in tandem. "You want to succeed?" Arya said, voice steady, cold with clarity. "The bond doesn't he just connect me to him, which connects me to this pack, to the truth. And we will stop you." Hunter's hand brushed hers in silent affirmation, the bond pulsing strong, alive yet electric. "Together." They had uncovered the first thread of the rogue plot, but the forest still whispered with danger. And Arya knew the true mastermind remained hidden, waiting, patient, weaving chaos from the shadows. The clearing seemed still again, but the air hummed with tension. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over, and as the bond pulsed sharply, threading between them like a living force, Arya felt something new, not fear, not doubt, but resolve. The rogue plot had been revealed, but now it was their turn to strike. Chapter 20, Bound by Ashes. The first light of dawn seeped through the shredded canopy, casting pale streaks across a battlefield scarred by fire and chaos. Smoke hung heavy in the air, curling in ghostly fingers as if reluctant to release the night's horrors. The rogue pack had gathered, the remnants of their assault converging under the cover of early mist, and Arya's pulse throbbed with anticipation and fear alike. Hunter's hand brushed hers as they stood atop a ridge overlooking the field. The bond pulsed sharply, insistent, threading through both of them, binding their senses, sharpening reflexes, synchronizing heartbeats. They were no longer separate entities. The bond had transformed into something tangible, something alive. "They're stronger than ever," Hunter murmured, eyes narrowing. "But we're ready." Together, Arya nodded, wolf instincts stirring beneath her skin. The memory of previous battles, the rogue plot, the betrayal within their own ranks, love it surged, merging with her fear and anger, forging clarity. This was not merely survival. This was reckoning. The rogues advanced, their numbers formidable. But Arya and Hunter met them with the precision of a predator and the cohesion of mates bound by destiny. Every movement, every strike flowed seamlessly, guided by the bond's pulse. Her claws and fangs were extensions of herself. Her senses sharpened to every tremor of the earth, every whisper of motion, every scent of blood and fear. Hunter moved beside her, a shadowed figure of power and focus. He intercepted threats before they reached her, anticipated attacks as if the bond gave him foresight, and in turn she mirrored his strategies instinctively. They were a storm, a tidal wave of wolf and human, fury and control, instinct and intellect, amid the chaos. The mastermind revealed himself. Cloaked in shadows, a counselor who had once worn the Alpha's trust as a mask stepped forward, arrogance radiating even through the din of battle. "You think you can stop me?" He spat, voice slicing through the clash of combat. "The pack is fractured. The rogues are everywhere." "And the bond? The bond will not save you?" Ariel's wolf flared, instincts and emotion intertwining. "The bond is stronger than you know," she growled, voice low and deadly. The threads of connection pulsed through her, wrapping around Hunter, weaving their actions into a single force. "It binds us to each other, to this PK and to the truth." "You can't touch that." Hunter's gaze met hers, eyes alight with shared purpose and trust. Together they struck. Arya lunged, claws raking with precision, while Hunter immobilized the counselor, their movements perfectly synchronized. The mastermind faltered under the combined force of their bond, fueled assault, his control slipping. "You," he hissed, disbelief coloring his words. "How?" "The bond," Arya replied, chest heaving, eyes locked on him. "It does not just connection, it does power, it does choice, and it does ours," with one final coordinated strike. The mastermind fell bound and subdued, the rogue forces scattering in disarray. The dawnlight illuminated the clearing, revealing the devastation of battle, but also the resilience of those who had survived. Hunter reached for her, hands steady, grounding. "Are you all right?" he asked, voice soft but resonant, threaded with relief and unspoken emotion. Arya's pulse slowed, wolf combing beneath her skin. She nodded, letting the bond anchor her. "We did it," she whispered. Together, for a moment, they simply stood, breath mingling with the rising sun. The bond humming between them like a living thing, the trials, the betrayals, the pain Teen had survived. Not merely by strength alone, but through connection, through trust, through surrender to the force that had haunted and guided them. The aftermath was quiet, save for the wind rustling through trees and the distant calls of surviving wolves reclaiming their territory. Arya turned to Hunter, eyes meeting his, the bond pulsing gently, reassuringly. I understand it now," she said. Voice steady. "The bond, it is not a chain. It is a choice, and I choose it. I choose us." Hunter's lips curved into the faintest smile, a mixture of relief and awe. "Then we were unstoppable," he said, voice low, carrying the weight of unspoken promises and shared scars. The forest around them seemed to exhale, the smoke lifting, sunlight spilling through, painting the world in hues of gold and renewal. They had faced fire and betrayal, rogue packs and hidden enemies, and emerged not merely intact, but transformed. Arya felt the wolf within her shift, finally at peace, fully integrated. The bond throbbed in resonance with her own heartbeat, a symphony of survival, strength, and trust. She had fought. She had resisted. She had doubted. But through it all, she had discovered something far greater. Love forged not from convenient stories, but from trials, choices, and shared destiny. Hunter stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from her face, eyes searching hers. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. The bond thrumming between them like a heartbeat, Vrya nodded, a smile touching her lips. Ready, the rogue threat was over. The pack was safe, and for the first time Arya understood the full depth of her power and the force of their bond. The fire had burned, and from the ashes they had emerged together. The mate bond pulsed once more, steady, unbreakable, alive. And as the first full light of day bathed the forest, Arya and Hunter stepped forward, not just as survivors, not just as mates, but as partners bound by choice, by destiny, and by fire. For in the end, love was not forgiveness alone, nor was survival mere instinct. Love was this, a bond forged in trial, tempered in chaos, and chosen, always, consciously. Together.